She built one of the most beloved farming channels on YouTube by showing you the truth. The muddy boots, the broken equipment, the calves born in the cold, the harvests that almost didn't happen. Meredith Bernard of This Farm Wife became a global name by refusing to sugarcoat anything. But here's what her channel can't fully capture: the weight that never leaves, the financial pressure that doesn't stop when the camera turns off, the loneliness that stretches for miles in every direction, the grief that changed how she sees her entire community. Farm life looks like freedom from the outside, but for the people actually living it, the reality is something far harder than any YouTube video can contain. The numbers hit differently when you understand what they mean to real families. Between the 2017 and 2022 USDA Census of Agriculture, over 140,000 farms disappeared from the American landscape. 5,000 more closed in 2023 alone. Then 2024 arrived, and farm bankruptcies jumped 55%. By 2025, 315 farms filed for Chapter 12 bankruptcy, a 46% increase from the year before, marking the second consecutive year of rising filings. And those are only the ones that made it to bankruptcy court. Thousands more quietly closed before reaching that point, absorbing the loss in silence. For the Bernards, this financial reality is personal. Meredith has openly said that YouTube income now contributes to the family budget. Lawrence put it plainly years ago: "You ain't never gonna make no living, you're gonna make a life." That's not a quote of contentment. That's the math of farming, and most families are doing it with nothing left over. Making it worse is that net farm income in 2024 was projected to be down nearly 40% from 2022, while production expenses hit record highs for the fourth consecutive year. Seed costs don't go down, diesel doesn't go down, interest rates on farm loans climbed sharply. Farmers got squeezed from both ends, and the safety net that was supposed to catch them was running on an outdated 2018 Farm Bill. The financial pressure would be brutal enough on its own, but it runs alongside something else entirely: physical labor that never stops, with no sick days and no backup. On Bernard Farm, there are no hired hands. It is Lawrence, Meredith, and eventually their two children, Wesley and Austin, handling everything across their beef cattle and crop operation. No payroll, no backup crew, no one to call when something breaks at the worst possible moment. And things break constantly. Viewers have watched flooding, stuck augers, broken combines, chainsaw mishaps, and equipment failures mid-harvest, all captured on video because that's what farm life actually looks like. When a tractor goes down during harvest, you don't call a manager. You fix it yourself, or you lose the crop. When a cow calves in freezing temperatures at midnight, you go out in the dark. There is no calling in sick. There is no someone else. What makes it even harder is that the body keeps a running tab. Farming ranks among the most physically dangerous occupations in America, yet there's no workers' compensation mindset out here. No option to rest and recover while someone else covers your shift. Every injury, every exhausting stretch, every brutal season gets absorbed and pushed through. The farm doesn't pause because you're hurting. It never has, and it never will. Then there's the isolation, which is harder to film and harder to explain. Meredith once joked that the directions to Bernard Farm involved churches, gravel roads, and cattle gates. She laughed about it. But there's something underneath that laugh, the reality of living miles from anyone, where your nearest neighbor has 4 legs. That's not a charming quirk of rural life. For a lot of farm families, that distance becomes something much heavier over time. Rural isolation isn't just inconvenient. It is a documented mental health risk factor, particularly in agriculture. Farm wellness coordinators describe it plainly. Farmers can feel completely alone, like they're stranded on an island with no way off. And what makes that isolation more dangerous is what surrounds them: large equipment, wide open land, and in most cases, almost no access to professional support. In 2018, 79% of rural non-adjacent counties had 0 psychiatrists. Not one. If you're struggling on a farm far from town, help isn't a short drive away. For many, it simply doesn't exist within reach. Meredith has described the farm as a place that gives her peace. And that's real. But peace and loneliness aren't opposites. They can exist in the same place at the same time. A lot of farm families know exactly what that feels like, even if they've never said it out loud. Meredith doesn't talk around this next part, and that's exactly what makes her different from most people in her space. She lost a close friend, a fellow farmer, to suicide. It shook her to her core, and rather than process it privately and move on, she stepped forward as an advocate, speaking openly about the mental health crisis hiding inside farming communities across America. She got trained, she got certified, she started saying out loud what farm families had been swallowing for decades. The statistics behind that decision are staggering. Farmers are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population, according to the National Rural Health Association. That number didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of financial pressure, physical exhaustion, isolation, and a culture that treats asking for help as a personal failure. Farmers will talk about a broken arm or a failed crop without flinching. But admitting they can barely get out of bed in the morning? That's still considered weakness in communities built on toughness. Meredith became a panelist at an American Farm Bureau convention specifically addressing this crisis. She stood in front of that room and said what needed to be said, that you don't have to be a doctor or a counselor to help someone who is struggling. Sometimes you just have to be willing to listen. Her friend's loss didn't just break her heart, it changed her entire purpose. What rarely gets examined is the specific weight that falls on farm wives. Meredith didn't grow up farming. She came from corporate sales, was pulling a steady income, had benefits, and a predictable schedule. In 2013, she walked away from all of it. For family, for proximity, for a pull she described as something she couldn't fully explain. And what she stepped into was a role with no clear edges and no defined finish line. Think about what a single day looks like. Homeschooling 2 children, managing the YouTube channel, the blog, the online store, the social media presence. Cooking, photographing, writing freelance articles for agricultural publications. Then walking out the door to help move cattle, rake hay, or troubleshoot whatever piece of equipment decided to quit that morning. Meredith once described herself as the farm's Uber driver, always moving, always needed somewhere, always the one filling the gap between whatever just broke and whatever still needs doing. Research on women in agriculture confirms this isn't unique to her. Women married to farmers carry a compounded stress load that combines the demands of running a household, supporting a business, and often generating additional income, all simultaneously. There's no shift change, there's no clocking out. And unlike most jobs that are hard, this one is also deeply personal. The farm isn't just where Meredith works, it's where she lives, raises her kids, and builds her entire identity. The pressure never fully leaves the property. There is one more layer to this that almost nobody talks about. And it's the one Meredith created entirely for herself. Putting your real life on the internet is not a neutral act. Every upload is a decision to hand strangers a window into something deeply personal, and then wait to see what they do with it. Meredith has been doing that for years, and she's been candid about what it actually costs. She still gets nervous before every single upload, even now. She still braces herself before checking the comments. Negative emails land in her inbox. Critical strangers pick apart decisions made on a working cattle farm they've never set foot on. She's talked about videos that brought out waves of cruel responses over something as innocent as a family moment. And yet she keeps hitting publish every single time. What that requires is something people dramatically underestimate. It's not just confidence, It's a willingness to absorb judgment about your marriage, your parenting, your farming decisions, your appearance, your choices, all while simultaneously trying to run an actual operation that demands your full attention every waking hour. Most people would have quietly stopped years ago. Meredith didn't, and the reason she gives is always the same. She believes the story matters. She believes that showing the real, unfiltered truth of this life is worth whatever it costs her personally to keep sharing it. Here's what Meredith Bernard's channel is really about. And it isn't cows and cast iron, though those are part of it. It's a document of something that is quietly disappearing. Large farms, less than 10% of all operations in the United States, now control over half the nation's farmland. The family farm, the kind where a husband and wife and 2 kids run everything themselves, is not a growth model. It is a survival story. Every flooded field, every broken header, every midnight calving, every shaky exhale before hitting upload. That's all evidence of something that exists, despite enormous pressure to stop existing. Meredith once said she believes all our stories matter. She meant it as encouragement, but it also carries a warning. When the family farms are gone, so are the stories. And once those are gone, there's no getting them back.